In today's video, I've got a little country guitar solo or study, which demonstrates some of my favourite country ideas and licks. So if you're into the country music, I hope this video is going to be for you. Even if you're not particularly into country, I still hope there's going to be a few things here of interest. I think this study can serve as a really good picking or technique workout, and I also want to discuss some more general fretboard knowledge kind of concepts which are important regardless of what kind of style you're talking about. And as I've already said in previous videos, I think a lot of country guitar licks and ideas are equally at home in other contexts, classic rock or blues for example, and you can quite easily adapt some of these licks and ideas. So let's get started. I'll play through this little solo. It's quite short, and then I will discuss what's going on. Key of G, and I want to start by just discussing the chords that we're going to be playing over. It's really important that you understand the harmony, that you have it internalized, I think, before you start shredding away in a country style, because this style is often about following the chord changes. So there's going to be a bit of what I would call chord tone soloing going on. You're kind of tailoring your note choice to the actual chord that you're playing over. It's just based on the 1, 4, 5 chords in the key of G. So G is the 1 chord, then C is the 4 chord, D is the 5 chord, and the progression is really a twist on a 12-bar blues. It's actually a little bit extended, so I think we've got 16 bars overall, so it's not quite a traditional 12-bar blues, but it's pretty close. It starts just on the 1 chord for 4 bars, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Going to the 4 chord, C, then back to the 1, then going to the 5 chord, so D. I'm actually playing this as a D7, so from the 5th string, 5th fret, and then 4, 5, and then 3. It's this kind of C grip 7th chord, and we've got 2 bars on this, and then going down to the 4 chord for 2 bars. So we've kind of got twice as long as you would normally expect on these chords. So 2 bars on D7, 2 bars on C7, and then we're back home to the 1 chord for 4 bars. So I'll just go around all of that just one more time. So 2, 3, 4. I'm going to take you through my study lick by lick then, and I also want to talk about what's going on behind these licks, some of the broader concepts, what I'm thinking when I'm playing this stuff. So with this piece you can learn it note for note if you want to, but better I think would be to really understand what's going on, and you can take some of these ideas and make them your own. So maybe extract some licks from this piece, try playing them in different places on the fretboard, different keys, and then you can really get something valuable out of this piece of music. So the opening phrase, it's played over the 1 chord, over the G chord, and it goes like this. So you can hear how that perfectly fits that G chord sound. And I suppose what's going on here, there are various ways that you could think about this or analyze it. You could think about it in terms of chord tones, so how the notes I'm playing relate to the notes found in this G chord. Are they actually in the chord, or are they other colors that I'm adding in, kind of chromatic notes, passing notes? And you could also think in terms of scales. So very often with country, it's a mixture of different scales, and often major and minor pentatonics. So I think that's probably the main way that I'm thinking about this particular lick. It's a mixture of G minor pentatonic, G major pentatonic, maybe with a few extra notes thrown in there. So the first thing I'd like us to try is just playing those scales and seeing those scales around the chord shapes. This is something that I really strongly recommend, that around all of your common chord shapes you can visualize and easily find your major and minor pentatonic scales. So if we're in this third position kind of zone on the fretboard, there's our G chord, which is our reference point, and then around that we fairly obviously we've got our G minor pentatonic, kind of pattern 1, box 1 of that scale. You've also got your G major pentatonic in the same position. And that's important, kind of being able to see them in the same position. They're kind of superimposed on top of one another, and then that gives you a choice of notes. You can kind of start minor and then go major, or the other way around, or just kind of mash the two of those scales together to get some nice sounds. And you can do the same thing down in the open position around this G chord, so G major pentatonic, and remember the relationship between major and minor as well. So if I've got G minor pentatonic here, I can go down 3 frets and it becomes the G major pentatonic. But if I want G minor pentatonic in this position, this might not be so familiar to some of you, but you could do it like this. G minor pentatonic. So you've got the two of those scales again on top of one another, and you can mix and match some of those notes. And then once you've got those scales, you can add in some extra notes which are going to make it sound even more country. So with the minor pentatonic, you could try adding in the flat fifth, which gives you the blues scale. And it's also common to add in the major third as well, particularly in a country situation. So the minor pentatonic only contains the minor third. The major third is going to be 1 fret above that. So you've got that kind of sound. It sounds kind of weird playing it as a scale like that. It's sort of not the way you would use that minor to major third in a musical situation, I don't think. But it's important to try and visualize the locations of those notes. So in the case of the G minor pentatonic, B flat is the minor third, and a B natural is going to be the major third. I think a better exercise would be something like this. That sounds really country. That's a nice, more of a lick kind of idea that integrates that minor to major kind of a sound. So there I was just starting on the minor third, and then going up to the major third, and then jumping down to the G and coming down the scale. So, and then doing the same thing here, and then here. So it's all about that minor to major. So already going off on a massive tangent there, but I hope it's useful and interesting information. But to return to this actual solo, the opening lick, just to remind you, went like this. Let me take you through exactly what's going on there. So we're starting with this B flat to B, minor to major, just coming down the minor pentatonic scale. It's more of the same kind of thing. So minor to major third. This is a little kind of run of notes from the blues scale. We've got that flat fifth in there. Then I'm coming down into the open position and I'm thinking G major pentatonic, but with the addition of the minor third. So adding the minor third to the major pentatonic is another very country kind of a sound. So that's kind of what's going on this lick. It starts up here around this chord, down into the open position. That's really just playing around with the G major pentatonic. A little bit of a bend there. Just bending that second fret note slightly sharp there. So that's kind of the second in terms of the intervals involved here, and I'm just bending up towards the major third, but probably not quite getting there, so it's still quite flat. It's more of that kind of bluesy sound. These are the kind of sounds that you've got to play around with in country. The way I think of it is you've got the major pentatonic, which is quite a sweet melodic sound, and then you've got the tougher, more bluesy sounding minor pentatonic, and however the mood takes you, you can kind of go with one or the other, or you can kind of mix and match. So that's our first phrase, all played over the 1 chord. Then we're heading to the C chord, the 4 chord, and this is the lick that I play. So all of that kind of fitting over that 4 chord, and then you can hear it going back to the 1 chord again. So now I'm thinking C. I'm thinking the 4 chord. I'm no longer thinking G minor, major pentatonic. I'm actually thinking C, and in this position. So you've got this C bar chord available to you here. So once again, you might like to think in terms of your major and minor pentatonics, but this time in relation to the C root note. So you've got your minor pentatonic, and you've got your major pentatonic, and of course you've got your additional note. So I might add in the minor third to the major pentatonic, or I might try adding in the major third to the minor pentatonic. You've got quite a wide selection of different notes to play around with there, but the actual lick that I'm playing, that's the first part of the lick. And in addition to this kind of scales approach, you can also just think in terms of chord tones and intervals. Even if you are thinking in terms of scales, it's always better not just to think finger patterns, but to actually think, what is the function of these notes? What are the intervals in these scales? And you might visualize a little triad shape here. You've got the root, the third and the fifth of that C chord that you're playing over. I'm starting off with the flat third, sliding into the chord tone. I'm adding in, that's the sixth, that's the flat seven, giving you that kind of bluesy sound. This idea here is very common. This is my major third, the E, and I'm kind of targeting that note. I'm playing 1 fret above, 1 fret below, and then I'm hitting the chord tone. Enclosure is a term that's sometimes used for that, particularly in the jazz sphere. So I'm enclosing the chord tone. So there's my root. 2 frets below my root, that's the flat 7. And then I'm kind of going back to the 1 chord here, so I've got this heading back to that kind of G major pentatonic sound. Then I'm playing some little double stops here, just thinking out of the chord shape here. So 5 on the A, 4 on the G, little double stop, just a little side step, and then playing this little 3-note G7 shape. So this is the 8th fret on the A, 9 on the D, and 7 on the G. So I'm thinking G7 here. There's no root, but that's the root note there. This is actually the flat 7, the 3rd, and the 5th. So you could think of it, it's kind of a inversion of a G7. If you know your G7 inversions on the middle 4 strings, we've got this series of shapes, and I'm just playing with the lowest 3 notes in this shape here, and again, little side step. So that's our 4-chord phrase going back to the 1. Then we're hitting the 5 chord, so D7, and that's going down to the 4 chord C7, and over the top of that I'm playing this phrase. So this is some quite similar material. So now I'm thinking the 5 chord D or D7, and it's very similar to the ideas I was playing over the C chord but moved up 2 frets. I've got my little triad there. I've got my little selection of notes in there. So again, I've got this minor to major third thing. There's all of that minor to major third stuff. And then we go into the 4 chord, and once again targeting that major third. So it's the flat third, that's the major third, and that's really strongly outlining the change to the 4 chord. So more double stops, so these are just right out of the chord shape. And then the final lick. So back home to the 1 chord, and I'm thinking a mixture of major and minor pentatonics once again. So bending at the 5th fret on the 2nd string, and I'm holding down the 3rd fret on the top string. So this is bending the major 6 up to the flat 7, and then this flat 3rd, kind of bluesy idea. Coming down the blues scale, and one more time we've got that flat 3rd to the major 3rd. So that's the solo. I'm just going to put all of that together at quite a slow tempo, just so on camera you've got the way I'm sort of fretting these notes and the way that I'm picking it. So here we go, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I want to finish by talking about how you might extract some extra value from this solo, take some ideas and some licks and make them your own. And this is exactly the approach that I would take when learning someone else's solo. I might learn something note for note if I really like it, but more often than not, I would just take some ideas and some licks and work with them, manipulate them, and try and get them into my own playing. So let me discuss how you might go about doing that with this particular solo. So perhaps we could just take the opening phrase, which, if you remember, went like this. So actually quite a long phrase there, so I might actually just take a smaller part of that phrase, maybe just the opening, maybe just that, and that makes quite a memorable, concise little phrase that I could easily get under my fingers and easily steal. So I'm using this is a 1 chord kind of lick. It's fitting over that G chord, so I'd associate the lick with this chord shape. My jumping off point here is this minor third of the pentatonic scale there, so it's got this minor to major thing going on. Down the scale, minor to major again, and I'm just going to end the phrase on the root note. So So the first thing you could do, you could move it around so that it fits other chords, and you could just kind of shift that up or down the fretboard. It's fairly obviously, so if I wanted to play that lick over a D chord, for example, I could just, because I've got it associated with this chord shape, I've kind of got the lick connected to the chord. It works over the D chord. But another thing you might like to do is try and find different places of playing the same notes, and that makes the phrase a little bit more versatile. So if I return to the key of G, we've got it here. What about if I try and find it in some other areas of the fretboard? So I could play it here. That kind of works quite nicely in that position. What about here? Or maybe come up here to this 10th fret kind of area, associate it with this chord shape. So, or even up here. So it might take a little bit of work. You might not be able to do that as quickly as I can do it. But if you can hear those notes, if you know your pentatonics, importantly, if you know your intervals and your chord tones, you should be able to find these licks elsewhere on the fretboard, and you're getting lots and lots of mileage out of a very simple idea. And of course you could do that in some other keys as well. So if I were playing over an E chord, then I could maybe play it like this. Actually, that works really nicely, I think, sort of starting here with the G to the G sharp, and then coming down into the open position like that. Makes a nice twangy lick if you play it lower down. So I hope you're starting to see how you can just take one very simple phrase, but suddenly you've got loads of options. And you could do exactly the same thing with any of the other phrases in this solo. So the 4-chord lick that I played, maybe just take the first part of that lick. That's a nice little phrase which is probably worth stealing. So I'm thinking about the chord shape here. I'm starting by sliding into the major third, hitting that flat 7 and then coming down. So I can obviously move that horizontally on the fretboard. So if I wanted to play over a G chord, it's a nice, very adaptable kind of a phrase. And then I could try taking that onto some other strings as well. So maybe I could play it around this C chord shape. That works nicely there. It probably works up here as well. So I hope you found that interesting. That's how I would approach things, and for me this is a really important skill, taking something that you found on the internet or off a record or wherever, and exploring it and making it your own in some kind of a way. The gear that I'm using today, my Telecaster 52 reissue from 1992 or 3, I think. I'm actually being a bit lazy today, and I'm just plugged into my Kemper Profiler, which I still think sounds really good. I suppose it's quite dated technology these days. I know they've come out with another version of it, but I still use it from time to time just because it's very convenient. I've got it plugged directly into my patch bay and then into my audio interface, so it's very easy for me just to get up a sound. And I had this sound up whilst I was planning this video, and I kind of didn't really feel the need to change it. It's sort of sounding good, so there's no need to sort of mess about miking up amps and effects pedals and all the rest of it. And the actual profile that I'm using is called 67 Pro Verb, so kind of a Fender type profile. I think there's a bit of compression going on there and a little bit of reverb. That's it for today. Thanks very much for watching. As usual, you can find the tab and the backing track up on the Patreon page. And there's actually quite an archive now of country guitar content on my Patreon page. Even though I'm not really a country guitar specialist, I've kind of stealthily built up quite a catalogue of country guitar lessons. So check those out if you like, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.